When the Millionaire CEO steps in, a shocking twist for this struggling mom at checkout. The fluorescent lights flickered above the store, creating a glitching effect that mirrored the chaos in Melissa's mind. She stood at the checkout line, heart pounding like a drum, clutching her worn purse filled with crumpled bills and loose change. This was the last chance to buy groceries for her 2 kids. The sour smell of rotten produce lingered in the air, but all she could focus on was the price of the items in her cart, nervously counting her pennies like they were precious jewels. Then, out of nowhere, a commotion erupted at the entrance. The big glass doors swung open with a dramatic swoosh, and in walked a tall figure, radiating an energy so intense it felt almost electric. It was James Harrington, the billionaire CEO, the man who everyone in the city whispered about. Rumor had it he'd made a fortune overnight, but what really captivated people was his mysterious background. No one knew where he'd come from or how he managed to build his empire. His presence was smooth like silk, but icy enough to send chills down Melissa's spine. The crowd turned, eyes wide and jaws dropped, as he strode down the aisles like a king surveying his kingdom. His tailored suit contrasted sharply with the faded jeans and sweatshirts of other shoppers. Melissa could hardly breathe as she caught his gaze. Those piercing blue eyes seemed to see right through her. A lump formed in her throat. She thought about the bills stacked on her kitchen table, how they seemed to taunt her with every wave of uncertainty. As he approached the register, whispers spread like wildfire. Is he donating money? Or is he here for something else? The tension thickened, every onlooker glued to the scene unfolding before them. Melissa felt the weight of judgment as she shifted nervously, clutching her cart like it might float away. What was this man doing here, in her ordinary world? Suddenly, James stopped. He scanned the checkout lane, and for just a heartbeat, his eyes locked onto hers again. "I'll take care of that," he said, pointing at her cart. His voice boomed, yet it carried a calmness that sent shivers down her spine. Questions raced through Melissa's head. Was she dreaming? Did she hear him right? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. In that moment, the air was electric with unanswered questions. The bustling store went quiet, everyone shocked into silence. Was this a publicity stunt? A random act of kindness? Or something more sinister hiding beneath his charismatic exterior? Melissa's heart raced. She wanted to bolt, yet she found herself rooted in place, trapped in this strange, surreal moment. What would happen next? Would this billionaire's intervention change her life forever, or would it expose secrets she wasn't ready to confront? Melissa's world narrowed to the fierce thumping of her heart, drowning out everything else: the whispers, the curious glances from other shoppers, even the cash register's ding as items were scanned. James Harrington was still looking at her, a confident half-smile on his lips. Her throat tightened as if it had been squeezed by a vice. "Take care of it?" she echoed flatly, her voice barely a whisper, betraying her incredulity. "Yeah," he replied, stepping closer. The cologne he wore was sharp, luxury wrapped in confidence, and it thrust her into a whirlwind of emotions: gratitude, suspicion, disbelief. Her thoughts jumbled together like a chaotic shuffle of cards. Was he offering a lifeline or a booby trap? "Mr. Harrington," the cashier stammered, snapping her back to reality. He was famous, after all. You can't just— it's fine, just ring her up," he interrupted smoothly, his voice cutting through the tension. The warmth in his tone hinted at kindness, though the intensity of his gaze remained unsettling. A collection of murmurs swept through the line, and Melissa felt the weight of their scrutiny. She stole a glance at the other's wide eyes, darting expressions, a sea of judgment colliding with a hunger for scandal. "Are you sure?" She blurted out, her voice breaking. I couldn't possibly let you, why not? He shrugged, a flicker of mischief dancing in his icy blue eyes. There's nothing to it. Just consider it a good deed. But that phrase caught in her throat like a thorn. Good deeds came with expectations, and she wasn't sure she wanted any part of it. This isn't some charity, she stated. It's just groceries. I can manage, he smirked slightly, leaning a bit closer, diminishing the distance between them. I see a mother doing her best for her kids. But you know what? Sometimes accepting help is strength too. His words hung in the air like a challenge, a dare to confront her pride. Melissa's mind raced. Did he really care, or was this just a game for him? A show of goodwill to further enhance his almost mythical persona? She looked around, half expecting someone from the crowd to jump in and reveal some dark motive. But who would do that? All she saw were hopeful eyes watching her, hanging on the outcome of this absurd situation. Let him handle it, a voice from behind her piped up, full of jealousy yet still excited. It's not every day someone like him offers help. Gritting her teeth, Melissa could feel a fire inside. The familiar weight of independence battled against the seductive lure of hope. She wanted to refuse him, to prove she could stand on her own 2 feet. But images of her children, hungry and desperate at home, pulled her the other way. Before she could respond, James had already placed a card on the counter. I insist, he said firmly, glancing back at her. Sometimes the universe gives you a nudge, you just need to recognize it. Melissa's heart sank. This wasn't just about groceries anymore, it was about pride, vulnerability, and the ugly underbelly of her reality. The friendly faces in the crowd weren't as friendly as they appeared. Some watched with envy, while others secretly delighted in her turmoil. With every second that passed, the tension grew thicker. The air crackled with possibility of kindness, or betrayal, or something she couldn't yet understand. Just as the cashier finished ringing up her items, a strange sound erupted from the store's back exit, a shattering crash that sent the atmosphere spiraling into chaos. Everyone whipped around, startled and frozen in shock. What was that? Someone shouted, panic rippling through the crowd. Melissa's stomach knotted, and fear coursed through her veins. In that moment, something shifted decidedly in her world. The billionaire who had stepped in for her at checkout may have been more than just a man with a silver spoon. As the emergency sirens blared to life and people began to scatter, one thought pierced through Melissa's mind: she could accept help, but she couldn't foresee what danger was looming just around the corner. What had she gotten herself into? The real drama was just beginning. A wave of sheer panic swept through the grocery store, drowning out the voices around her. Melissa felt her heart race, matching the frantic flurry of shoppers scrambling for exits, their faces a blend of fear and confusion. The air turned electric with a spine-chilling tension that settled into the pit of her stomach. James! She heard, but it was someone else's voice, a woman near the front with fire in her eyes, pointing towards the back aisle where the crash had come from. What was that? Is everyone okay? Before she could formulate a response, James was already moving. He slipped through the chaos with unparalleled poise, an island of calm in a storm. He turned back, his intense gaze locking onto hers. Stay close. He commanded, his words stirred something within her: defiance. Instinct. She barely processed it as she found herself stepping forward, a tug of urgency driving her towards him. A wild mix of dread and adrenaline coursed through her veins. What were they walking into? The crowd surged, faces a blur as she pressed on, but in the flood of bodies, her children's faces emerged in her mind. What if they were with her? She had to keep herself anchored for them. A flick of horror crossed her features as the irony pulled at her heart. She was desperate for help now, from the very man she had been so hesitant to accept from. Clear of the immediate crush of people, she followed James, whose every step seemed decisive and deliberate, directing others to stay put. Call the cops! He shouted to a bewildered employee frozen at the registers. We need to know what is going on back there. Each pounding step echoed in her head, growing louder as they approached the dimly lit expanse at the rear of the store. That S when she caught the unmistakable scent of something metallic. Was it fear or something worse? The silence that followed, thick and oppressive, pressed down on her like a weight. The aisle widened, offering a glimpse into a chaotic scene: a toppled display, scattered cans rolling across the floor like marbles in a race, and a shattered glass door leading to the storeroom. The sudden silence felt ghostly, and then she saw it. A man groaning on the floor, crumpled by the gaping doorway. Blood trickled down his temple, the sight hitting her like a punch to the gut. "Oh no," she breathed, inching back instinctively. James knelt beside the injured man, his face morphing into a mask of concern. "Somebody call an ambulance." He barked again, lifting the man's head gently. "Stay with me, buddy." Melissa blinked, feeling suspended in time. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to protect herself, her children. Yet another harsh reality struck her: this was happening, right here. She couldn't look away. "Is he?" she whispered, her voice trembling. She couldn't finish the question. The depth of shock and curiosity warred within her. "Just focus on the nearest exit," James urged, looking up and locking eyes with her again. "Please, don't get involved." But she couldn't just step back now. This was more than a grocery mishap. As fear sank its claws deeper, she surveyed the edges of the scene, noting the murmur of whispers around her, like distant echoes of dread. The onlookers huddled, casting judgment, pity, fear. What would they say if they knew she was tied to this situation through a fateful encounter over groceries? Before she could respond, a flash of movement caught her eye. An unfamiliar figure slid through the shadows behind the display, a second man, eyes glinting with malevolence. He grinned menacingly, and that single gesture mimicked a predator poised to strike. "Look out!" she screamed, her body moving before thought could catch up, but it was too late. She should have run. What had she stumbled into? The insidious danger cloaked in an otherwise ordinary day was far more pervasive than she'd ever imagined. Just then, the lights flickered above them, giving a taste of uncertainty, and as panic morphed into chaos once more, Melissa felt her heart sink. In a heartbeat, everything would change. Would they all make it out in one piece? The world around Melissa seemed to collapse in on itself. Time stretched like taffy as adrenaline surged through her veins. There was no longer a grocery store, it was a battleground, and she was caught in the crossfire. The second man's grin twisted her insides. It wasn't just the threat of violence, it was the knowledge, the undeniable sense that something dark was lurking. James's voice broke through her haze. "Get the kids. Get them out," he shouted with an urgency that sliced through her panic. His command tethered her to the moment, and she instinctively turned towards the direction of the crowded aisles, her heart thudding against her ribcage like a drum. But her feet felt like they were glued to the floor. Fear paralyzed her, anchoring her in place while chaos erupted around her. The lights flickered again, casting unsettling shadows that danced on the store's polished floor. The whispering crowd seemed to hush as all eyes turned toward the man on the ground and the predatory figure looming behind the display. Melissa couldn't shake the feeling that every second counted, yet she stood rooted, torn between the instinct to flee and the compulsion to help. "Stay back!" a voice from the crowd yelled, drawing her gaze. A burly man stepped forward, clenching his fist. "We need to get out of here. All of us." But then, the second man lunged forward, drawing a knife from his belt, an emblem of impending violence. The sharp steel gleamed menacingly in the harsh fluorescent lights. The air crackled with danger, and Melissa's breath caught in her throat. James moved like a flash, a whirlwind of action as he pushed the injured man to the side and stood, blocking the knife-wielding figure. "You don't want to do this," he shouted, voice steady despite the danger. He stepped in, attempting to defuse the situation like a hero out of a movie, but the tension thickened like fog. Melissa could barely breathe. Her heart raced as she glanced around, seeking the faces of her children. They had to be safe. She could almost feel their small hands in hers again, their laughter blending with the hum of the store now swallowed by panic. In that horrifying moment, she realized she didn't even know where they were. "Mom! Mom!" came a high-pitched cry from the front of the store, slicing through the chaos. The familiar sound grounded her. "Jacob!" she shouted in desperation, ready to run, to storm through the crowd. But movement captured her attention again. A second flash behind the display, a third figure emerging, equally sinister, and equally armed. Panic erupted, screams merged with the clatter of carts being pushed aside. "Get to safety!" pleaded the store manager, who was trying to usher customers outside. An electric tension stung the air as Melissa fought to orient herself. "James! We need to go. Now!" She still stood there, paralyzed, when suddenly, the lights went out completely, plunging them into shadow. Gasps turned to screams as the store transformed into a nightmarish version of itself, chaos unhinged. The darkness was all-consuming, raw panic roiling in her gut. In that surreal moment, she searched for a glimmer of hope, but only shadows and dread lurked around her. Melissa felt a hand clasp around her wrist. It was James, pulling her toward the nearest exit, and the world plunged into a blur of voices and movement. "I can't leave without my kids," she blurted, shouting above the chaos. In the dim light, she could see the outline of a store employee, a figure standing alone, panic-stricken. "I'll help you find them," the woman shrieked. "They're near the register." In the corner of her mind, doubt nagged. Could they really make it? Could everyone escape this nightmare? Light flickered back to life, but not before a piercing scream rang out. And that cry shattered the air like glass. What had become of her children? The veil of terror fell heavy once more, plunging them deeper into uncertainty. In that moment, they needed a plan. But would they find safety in time, or had the darkness already claimed its victims? The question hung in the air as Melissa steeled herself. She wouldn't stand by any longer. Someone would pay for this chaos, and she'd make sure she left no stone unturned. But could she keep her children safe through the unraveling storm? Panic surged like a tidal wave, pulling Melissa under. The flickering lights only highlighted her dread, revealing flickering shadows that seemed alive, watching her, waiting. Jacob's cry had echoed, sharp and clear, but now it felt far away, muffled by the chaos swallowing the grocery store whole. "Stay close!" James yelled, his grip tightening around her wrist as they dashed toward the front registers. The woman who had promised to help trudged ahead, fear flooding her unsteady steps. With every hurried footfall, Melissa's mind spiraled. Were her kids scared? Were they lost among the chaos? She envisioned them alone, huddled somewhere, eyes wide with terror. The thought ignited a volcanic rage within her, an instinct sharper than any blade. The aisle loomed ahead, filled with terrified shoppers frozen in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the horror unfurling around them. Someone screamed again, their voice ringing out like a gunshot, bouncing off the walls and echoing in her ears. She pushed forward. "Jacob! Emma!" Her voice came out more frantic than she'd intended, a desperate plea lost in the din. But just as the end of the aisle came into view, the store manager, a once composed figure now reduced to panic, heralded a new wave of terror. "They're in the back. Get everyone out. Now!" The words crashed over her in tidal waves, drowning her. She barely registered the way James pulled her towards the exit, her spirit aching to break free. Did they expect them to leave now? A family? A mother without her children? James, there's no way. Melissa seized his arm, wild-eyed. "We can't leave them. I won't go without them. We have to think, Mel." He gripped her shoulders urgently, trying to steady her. "We can't help them if we're caught in this mess. We need to regroup." But there was no time for discussion. The lights went out again, plunging them back into the maddening abyss. Footsteps scattered in all directions, a haunting symphony of panic. Then came another scream, piercing and raw, a chilling reminder of the sinking reality, the brutal urgency of survival overtaking everything. What if The thought came unexpectedly, a thread of something darker tugging at her consciousness. What if her children weren't just lost in the fray? What if they had been taken? Pushing through the crowd that fought in every direction, Melissa felt her heart race. Shadows blurred around her, and the only thing she could latch onto was the tightening grip of James, pulling her abruptly to the right. He peered past the shelves, trying to catch a glimpse of something, a flash of color that could belong to Jacob's shirt, or perhaps Emma's hair. "Can you see them?" she gasped, anxiety ricocheting through her. "Not yet, stay low," he urged, squatting as they ducked behind the nearby checkout counter. Panic morphed into resolve. In the eye of the storm, they had to gather their thoughts. Moments stretched into eternal seconds as they huddled behind the registers. Shouts and clattering carts buzzed above them, a true catastrophe unfolding. Fear washed over her in waves, twining with determination. "Whatever happens," Melissa murmured, her voice just above a whisper, "we will find them." A sudden crash startled them both, sending a jolt through her veins. The store's security gate, a mechanism she had never noticed, began to fall. They were running out of time. Then, with a deftness she hadn't known he possessed, James pulled out a phone. "I'll call for help, stay sharp." But before she could respond, a trio of chaos-engulfed figures lunged towards them from the shadows, eyes wild, bearing down with intent as the weight of their menace carved out a new reality. A frenzied realization struck her: would James' plan even work? Or had the deepening shadows already marked their children's last moments of innocence? As the figures advanced, fear cut through her, sharper than ever. Melissa knew right then, the real battle was just beginning. Would she have the courage to face what darkness lay ahead, and would it lead her to her children? The storm was closing in. The trio surged closer, their movements erratic, almost animalistic in their desperation. Melissa's pulse thundered in her ears. She felt James's grip tighten just a fraction more, flipping her instinct from survival to protection. "Get back!" James barked, his voice firm, casting a shadow of bravery as he shoved Melissa behind him. The figures paused, assessing him with baleful eyes. They were men, unkempt and wild, the remnants of civility peeled away in the echoing chaos of the grocery store. Melissa's stomach twisted, their breaths were ragged and hot. With a sudden adrenaline burst, she crouched lower, her heart racing against the steel of fear. "Is that really how you want to play this?" James called out, his bravado a desperate mask for the fear lodged in his throat. Melissa's gut nodded. What if James didn't win this verbal battle? What if they were pushed into something darker? She had to act while they were distracted. Her eyes darted across the countertop, searching for anything that could be used. A stray can, a sharp object, anything, but before she could make a move, one of the figures lunged. Melissa instinctively gasped, feeling the air whoosh past her. He was fast, closing the distance as if propelled by pure panic. James sprang forward, intercepting him mid-attack. A spiral of fists and wild movements erupted in the small space behind the register. The other two figures hesitated, caught between indecision and bloodlust. The sound of flesh against flesh was savage and raw, and Melissa's breath caught as she saw the glint of a knife slip from the assailant's pants. The knife danced dangerously in the dim light. Her heart raced as she reached for something, anything. A bottle of soda, would it help? She couldn't think, she just needed to act. "James!" she screamed, panic exploding in her chest. In that instant, the figure with the knife turned, eyes blazing with a wild intensity, as if he had heard her heartbeat echoing in the turmoil. He lunged toward James, who was grappling with the first attacker. The sickening sound of the blade slicing through the air sent a shiver down her spine. With a surge of courage, Melissa hurled the soda bottle. It struck the knife-wielding man's wrist, just as he was about to plunge the blade down. The distraction worked, he stumbled back, horrified by the unexpected assault. James seized the moment, pushing with all his might. The brawl intensified, fists flying in desperate defense. One assailant down, but the others surged forward, emboldened by sheer panic. "Run!" James shouted, urgency flooding his voice as he gained the upper hand, grappling with the larger man. But Melissa hesitated. Her body froze. She could feel every instinct telling her to flee, but her heart pulled her in another direction. What about the kids? She shouted back, desperation clawing at her voice. Focus on your kids. He yelled, straining under the weight of his struggle. Get to safety. In that moment, clarity struck her like lightning. They're counting on me. She turned on her heel, heart racing as she dashed toward the store's back. The familiar aisles now felt foreign, shadows dancing ominously along their edges. She could hear the commotion grow behind her, chaos erupting as James continued to fight. Then, out of the corner of her eye, something moved. A flicker of color flashed near the frozen food section, a pink jacket, Emma's jacket. Hope ignited in her chest, fueling her desperate strides. Emma! Jacob! She yelled, arms pumping at her sides, heart thudding against her ribs, but as she neared the shimmering lights of the freezer, a chilling realization washed over her, a memory echoing in the depths of her mind, the warning of a kidnapper's face, a chilling news report, and whispers in the dark. What if she wasn't just looking for her children? What if the worst had already happened? Fear flooded her veins as she slowed, reaching the freezer section with hesitant breaths. The aisle was empty, too empty. Where had they gone? Just as panic threatened to break her resolve, she heard a muffled cry. Mom, help! It was Jacob, but the distress in his voice sent shivers down her spine. Melissa took a step towards the sound, every instinct urging her to run, to save him, but shadows flickered all around her. With each step, she felt eyes watching, waiting. Something was terribly wrong. Would she be able to rescue her son, or would the darkness claim them all before she could fight back? The freezer section felt like a tomb, cold and still. Those chilling cries, small and desperate, haunted the air. Jacob! She managed, her voice barely making it past the fear that tangled painfully in her throat. She felt her legs propel her forward, urgency hijacking her senses. Each step echoed hollow, swallowed by the stillness of the grocery store, shadows engulfing her. As she edged around the corner, her heart raced. Flashes of pink Emma's jacket danced in her periphery. A mixture of dread and hope had her caught in a whirlwind, adrenaline coursing through her veins like fire. Jacob? She whispered, straining to hear. A shudder ran through her, the sound had faded. What if her son was? Snap! The unmistakable sound of a footstep crackled behind her, freezing her to the core. She spun, fists clenched, eyes darting into the thick darkness that clung like a thick fog. Nothing. Just the machinery humming, the hum of the store that seemed almost mocking now, as if it knew something she didn't. Keep talking, buddy, Melissa encouraged, carefully backing away from the aisles. I'm coming. His voice returned, laced with fear. Mom, they've got me. Her heart plummeted, the words igniting a firestorm of rage. Who? She shouted, desperate to keep his spirit up. But listening closely now, she could hear a third voice growling, taunting. You think she's gonna save you? You're all alone now, kid. The menace in the voice sent chills cascading down her spine. Who were these people? Panic ignited, she had to get her son out of there. Just as she thought she might seize a glimpse of him, a figure stepped forward from the shadows, tall and broad-shouldered, with a grin that sent her heart racing for all the wrong reasons. Look what we have here, the man said slowly, his leering eyes piercing. A little lost lamb, thinking she could save the day. Melissa felt sick, a tremor racking her body. This wasn't just about her son anymore. It felt like a trap, something sinister simmering beneath the surface. Let him go. The man tilted his head, amused. You really think a little mom like you can take on a gang like us? Mom! Jacob cried, desperate. Shut that kid up. The man barked at someone unseen, and Melissa's heart seized. She could hardly breathe, her mind racing. How many were there? Would she really risk herself against a gaggle of thugs armed with nothing but love for her children? She had to think, but fear clouded her judgment. Then she remembered James' words, "Get to safety." The urge to flee battered against the love that urged her to fight. "You're wrong," she snapped, her voice sharper than she felt. "I will get him back." She took a few steps back, trying to read the situation while the man's eyes gleamed with cruelty. Suddenly, the lights flickered overhead, a small bomb of chaos in the silent dread. The power around them quivered with uncertainty, shadows dancing wildly against cold metal. Something snapped inside her, an instinct born from protection and determination. In that moment, she saw the shadows twirling, reinforcing her resolve that stood strong, pounding against the walls of despair. "You want to fight?" she growled, lungs heavy with the weight of her defiance. "Fine. But you'll regret underestimating me." Before she could second-guess herself, she lunged towards the noise of Jacob's whimpers, ready to confront the farcical villain threatening her family. And as she sprinted forward, a sudden realization struck her. It wasn't just Jacob who was in danger, it was Emma too. Fury erupted inside her as she rushed into the depths of the frozen aisle, ready to defy any odds. But as she turned a corner, the sight that met her eyes sent her heart crashing. Alone and too late, standing there before her was Emma, with wide eyes locked on a man just as tall as the shadows that had been lurking. One unexpected twist in the narrative that threatened to unravel everything. "Mom, run!" Emma shouted just as the man's hand reached for her. Would Melissa be able to save her children from the clutches of evil, or would this twisted tale take a final turn toward despair? Melissa's heart dropped into her stomach. The gravity of the moment bore down on her, her lungs tugging uselessly for air. Emma was frozen, caught in the grasp of terror as much as she was in the man's grip. "Let her go!" Melissa shouted, every ounce of her voice layered with desperation. She couldn't let fear choke her resolve, not when Emma needed her to fight. The man's grip tightened around Emma's arm, and he laughed, a sound so dark it felt like it brushed against ozone. "You're not in a fairy tale, sweetheart. Nobody's coming to save you." His eyes glinted, filled with menace. A wave of unease crashed over Melissa. She resisted the urge to retreat against this predator wrapped in shadows. "Don't even think about trying anything stupid," he warned, and the threatening edge in his voice made her skin crawl. But in that moment, something primal surged inside Melissa. She felt every mother's instinct kicking in, igniting her spirit. Jacob's voice echoed in her mind. "Mom, Mom, please." She stepped closer, the cold air wrapping around her, but it didn't bother her. "You don't want to do this," she said, lowering her voice but letting the darkness seep into her words. "You let her go, and I'll pretend you never showed up here." The man raised an eyebrow, intrigued, as if she were cleaving a divide between ambition and cruelty. "What's in it for me, huh? You think I'm scared of some little mom playing hero?" "I'm not scared," she shot back, and for a second, his grip on Emma wavered, surprise flickering behind those cold eyes. Then, the lights flickered again. This time, they pulsed erratically, teasing the edges of potential enemies. Great. More chaos. Melissa took advantage of the moment. Before the man could organize his thoughts, she charged. With a forceful shove, she launched herself forward, startling the man and causing him to stumble back, releasing Emma. "Run!" Melissa yelled, adrenaline flooding her system as she battled the rising tide of hope. Emma didn't hesitate, she dashed towards safety, her bright pink jacket flashing like a beacon in the murky aisle. But as Melissa spun around to follow, the man regained his footing, a predator fueled by rage. "You're gonna regret that, lady," he roared, lunging toward her with the fury of a cornered animal. Melissa barely had time to react. She instinctively ducked, barely catching a glint of metal as a knife flashed through the air, narrowly missing her shoulder. The aisle seemed to lengthen, and time became an agonizing stretch of seconds. She focused on Emma, who was nearly at the edge of the section, calling out for her brother. "Jacob, let us go. Now." Then she turned her full attention back to her adversary. "Back off." But before she could finish her threat, the man stumbled again as a door crashed open somewhere deep in the grocery store, the sound echoing like a judgment from the heavens. Another figure entered the fray, tall and imposing. Melissa squinted to get a better look. The newcomer had an aura about him, powerful, undeniably rich with authority. "Let them go," the new figure commanded, and the command reverberated through the air like a promise of security. Melissa's heart jumped. Who was this man? Could he be her way out? But the blade-holding thug narrowed his eyes, torn between fleeing from the unexpected intrusion or staying to finish what he started. There was a pulse in the air, thick with tension, as the two men locked eyes, adrenaline crackling. The instant felt impossibly loaded, everything hinged on what would come next. Which man would triumph? Melissa held her breath. Would this unexpected savior prove to be her shield, or lead them all deeper into danger? The answer loomed just outside their grasp. The man with the knife glared at the newcomer, his jaw clenched in fury. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he snarled, the blade glinting ominously in his hand. "Someone who doesn't take kindly to bullies," the tall figure replied, his voice steady and firm, taking a step forward that radiated confidence. Meanwhile, Melissa felt an odd blend of hope and uncertainty. This man was a potential hero, but who exactly was he? "Back off." The thug spat, shifting his grip on the knife as his eyes darted around, weighing options. "This is none of your business." "It is now," the stranger said, taking another step closer. "Let the girl go, and I promise I won't hurt you. If you choose to make this difficult, I can assure you, we'll both have problems." Melissa noticed the way the corner of his mouth twitched, like a predator revealing his teeth. There was something commanding about him, something that suggested he'd dealt with monsters like this before. Emma was still running, desperately searching for her brother. "Jacob! Where are you?" she called, her small voice echoing through the store. The thug hesitated, eyes flicking back to Melissa, then back to the imposing figure. For a moment, the battle between malice and perception hung in the air like an electrified wire. "Last chance," the newcomer warned, voice low, each word deliberate, sending shivers down Melissa's spine. The knife-wielding man shifted again, fatigue mixing with his bravado. "Go to hell!" he shouted, lunging forward. In a flash, the other man stepped aside, skillfully avoiding the slice. Melissa barely registered the movement before it happened. The blade arched through the air, striking nothing. With sudden ferocity, the tall figure countered, grabbing the thug's wrist in a twisting motion that caused the knife to clatter to the floor. The metallic sound rang out like a gunshot, sending a shiver down Melissa's spine. "Run, Melissa!" he yelled, voice booming as he wrestled the man to the ground, arms pinned. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, she bolted, her legs pumping beneath her as if they could fly. The world faded in the background as she sped towards where Emma had last been. A swell of hope surged in her chest. But horror washed over her as she rounded a corner. Emma was standing right in front of another man, this one wearing a dark hoodie pulled over his head, hands concealed. "Emma! No!" Melissa screamed, heart hammering. Time slowed as she sprinted toward her daughter, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. The hoodie guy turned slowly, revealing cold, calculating eyes that sent a jolt of fear straight down her spine. Emma looked frozen in place, taken by surprise, blissfully unaware of the danger looming so close. "Get away from her!" Melissa shouted, her voice cracking with urgency. Without hesitating, the newcomer still grappling with the first thug sensed something was wrong. He spun away, scanning for movement, and locked eyes with Melissa. "Move!" he shouted, straining against the man beneath him, but it was too late. The hooded man lunged at Emma, and for an instant, everything came crashing down around them. Melissa's blood turned to ice as she witnessed her daughter's face transform from confusion to sheer terror. Melissa could feel her heart thundering in her chest, a primal roar urging her to act. Then everything spiraled at once, the chaotic sounds of sirens in the distance, the grunts and shouts of the struggle behind her, and the raw, palpable fear echoing off the grocery store walls, and just then, as if time collapsed into a singularity of dread, she understood. The new threat was more than just unexpected, it was her worst nightmare coming to life. Was this chaotic drama still a fight for survival, or had they crossed into something far darker, lurking just beneath the surface? The answer was lurking closer than she could ever imagine. Melissa's heart raced as the hooded man advanced toward Emma. Time stretched like taffy, each heartbeat echoing loud in her ears. No, she couldn't let that happen. Not again. Not after everything they had been through. Get away from my daughter. Melissa screamed, her voice raw and desperate. The words poured from her as she darted forward, pushing back the panic gripping her throat, her love for her children igniting a fire of determination. Emma's wide eyes were locked onto the shadowy figure, too stunned to act. The hooded figure grinned, reveling in the moment as he reached for Emma. Melissa lunged, every ounce of her being focused on protecting her child. With a strength she didn't know she had, she shoved him back, the force of her action surprising them both. For a brief second, the surprise on his face was enough to freeze the horrifying moment. Run, Emma! She shouted, urgency prioritizing clarity over fear. Emma was still rooted in shock, confusion racing across her little face. Go! Melissa urged, her voice rising, cutting through the haze of chaos. Emma blinked, and suddenly comprehension crashed over her. She spun and sprinted toward safety, weaving through aisles that once felt like home but were now nightmares. Mom! Jacob's frantic voice tore through the atmosphere, sending a surge of dread through Melissa's heart. I'm here. She called, the response strengthening her resolve. The hooded man recovered, narrowing his eyes as he realized he had missed his chance. Don't think you've won yet. He hissed, his hand reaching for something hidden beneath the folds of the fabric. Melissa didn't wait. She rushed forward, barreling toward the hooded figure, adrenaline coursing through her veins. In that moment, she wasn't just a single mother caught in chaos. She was a lioness defending her cub. As she closed the distance, the stranger from before the tall figure who had intervened burst back into view, successfully shrugging off the previous thug. His brow furrowed as he sprinted to her side, catching her arm. I've got this one. Melissa didn't stop to question him, she could feel unmatched strength radiate from him like a beacon. She blocked the vision of fear, locking onto her children. The sense of urgency propelled her like a rocket. Jacob! Emma! She yelled, aware that time was slipping through her fingers like sand. Just as the familiar pink jacket came into sight, her heart slipped again. Emma was fumbling, her little hands gripping Jacob's as they scampered to the front registers where a few patrons still lingered in horror. Get to the exit, now. Melissa urged, fighting back the lump in her throat. James and I are right behind you. But the threat loomed closer. The hooded man shuffled ominously, regaining ground as he eyed Melissa and James with a twisted satisfaction. You think you can escape? He sneered, voice dripping with malice. James stepped in, chest heaving, every muscle coiled and readied for the confrontation. Try us, he said through clenched teeth, framing the moment with a mix of intimidation and anger. The fight ignited once more. With a flurry of movements, the two men collided with such intensity that the impact shook the aisles. Melissa felt her heart pound harder, watching James grapple with him, both of them exchanging wild blows, sweat glistening and tension crackling. Run! James bellowed, eyes fierce with determination as he threw a decisive punch. That moment broke the spell of fear holding Melissa captive. Now! She shouted, desperate for her children's safety. Mom! We're over here! Jacob cried, pulling Emma along, each step growing more frantic. Melissa darted through the skirmish, urgency coursing through her, hands outstretched, drawing her children into the protection of her arms. Stay close! She urged, her breath straining to keep herself steady under the threat. And just as they reached the checkout area, the unmistakable sound of sirens finally wailed, drowning out chaos and shaking her resolve. The store was losing its grip on sanity. James, still engaged in a battle far more chaotic than anything Melissa ever anticipated, wrestled the hooded man to the ground one last time, an echoing thud halting dangerously close. The thug gasped, his bravado slipping as reality crashed down. "Just let me go," he pleaded, voice shaky. "This isn't worth it." "No choice now," James growled, holding him down while glancing back at the family strong and steadfast. With the police lights bathing the grocery store in blue and red flashes, the thugs quickly abandoned their bravado. The crowd began to stir, hope flickering to life again amidst lingering disbelief. "Quick! This way!" Another store employee shouted, waving people to the exit as order started to resume. Melissa propelled her children forward. Jacob clenched Emma's hand tightly, both of their faces painted with relief and fear. James detached himself from the altercation, finally stepping back, the weight of the harrowing moments visibly lifting from his shoulders. The trio dashed toward the exit, Melissa's heart lifting like a weightless feather. They burst through the doors into the safety of the outside world, bursting into the crisp air, feeling the gentle embrace of freedom. "Mom! We made it!" Jacob exclaimed, eyes shining with disbelief. "Yes, sweetie, we did," she exclaimed, pulling both of her children into a warm embrace, relief pouring through her like a swell of sunlight. Around them, sirens continued to wail, and emergency responders rushed inside to secure the area. The chaos was melting away, replaced by unity blooming among members of the little community who had never been so closely knit together, even if just for a moment. As the gravity of the day settled, Melissa felt tears welling in her eyes. She looked up to see James approaching, the fire of his spirit matching her own. "Thank you," she said, voice cracking under the weight of gratitude. James nodded, brushing a hand through his tousled hair, the same piercing blue eyes softening with warmth. "Just doing my part to protect family," he replied, his voice steady. Her heart fluttered. In this wild twist of fate, perhaps she found something more than help today. Maybe, just maybe, she stumbled upon new hope, a connection in shared strength. And as sirens began to recede and normalcy threatened to return, the moment lingered precious in the air. They had faced shadows and emerged. Melissa took a deep breath, finally feeling the weight of the worry beginning to lift. "Now," she said, looking down at her children, "let us go home." As they turned to leave the chaos behind, the road ahead shimmered with the light of possibility and a new beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but with her children at her side and newfound strength with her, Melissa knew they would build their future together. Now was their moment to soar. Remember, you need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive stories that light up your life. Smash that like button now to keep this content thriving and help the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this explosive ending. And don't forget to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.